Well, isn't it funny how this works? I start talking about things that are really important, and yet again, YouTube sends me flying. And it's interesting because that never used to happen on my phone before. It's interesting how the more relevant the conversations I have, as the harder it is to go out there, the more shadow banned it gets. And there's nothing I can do about that. I'm not surprised that the information put out there is limited in certain ways and made difficult to access, and neither should you. Said, yeah, no, I said a lot of things I don't like. Haven't you noticed, Joseph? It happens over and over again to me because I'm telling you things that you isn't it funny? That happens to me a lot. But I'm going to go ahead and give you some connections that you can put together, and you can choose to believe them or not believe them. That's your business, and I respect that. Ultimately, I'm going to do that my way. My wife and I are preparing with the understanding that these are battles that are going to be forced upon us that literally will be of life and death consequence. And as the story says between us, you can only die once if you do this the right way, and it's the second death you want to avoid. And if you don't understand all that, well, then you need to get to reading the good book. But fundamentally, you have a choice to go ahead and protect your sovereignty as a spiritual being, and you're going to need to be aware of that. And they don't want you to be aware of that. That's why everything you're allowed and permitted is designed to take you in 100 different directions, other than the idea that you actually have control over your life. And I want to talk about this a little bit because I think it's really important to understand this, that ultimately you cannot be compelled to take things that will go ahead and destroy you. I mean, you can be forced to it, you can be put to death, but you cannot ultimately be forced to do this. And this is the choice where you're going to have to express a lot of courage. We may be heading for another time of martyrs. I don't want it to come to that. I'd rather fight and have a safety sanctuary and an ark, if you want, an Exodus project before that. And I'm already working throughout the Northeast, and I hope that all Christians and people of good character who represent and support liberty and sovereignty will stand for that. We're going to have to move everything forward at rapid speed, far more quickly than I wanted to do, and much more than we were ready to do. And it probably won't succeed, but it doesn't really matter. It's a lordly act, and we'll pray for support. I say a lot of prayers. Hopefully, God is listening to them. I'm sure He is, but His will be done either way. And whether it ends up being that we go to a better place or whether we make this a better place, our choices are constrained if we really understand this. But I want you to understand where it came from, because I think it's really important. I don't think people understand what technology really is, and I want to talk about what technology is, in my opinion, is my understanding of it. Because technology is a very weird thing, right? We think of it as a machine, and we think of it as just like a robot, like a crank engine or something, just put to different things. But it isn't. It's a at this point. Good morning, Arian. Technology has come to a new evolution. We talk about artificial intelligence and what it is. What it is intelligence is language. It's the idea. Good morning, Red. Glad to see you. Intelligence starts with language. Look at the Bible as an example. In the beginning, there's the word. If you look at robotics, in the beginning, there is binary. There's a set of instructions that come out in a certain format where you have letters go one way potentially, and you have words go another way. And even if those words, whether they're in a phonetic language like English or binary language like computing, ultimately you end up with the same idea, a set of complex constructions that lead to certain outcomes. And machines cannot make life out of their own. Life cannot come from unlife. And yet we see in this coding a restructuring of a neural network, of a network of light that is meshed in a certain way to give the ability to perceive and interact with reality in certain functions. And admittedly, machine intelligence to this point, other than what we have allowed it, has not been able to interact with reality. But what it has been, or excuse me, has not been able to adapt reality, but it can understand it to some extent. It can act upon it, and that is no problem. That is what it is. Is it's a form of occupation if you really want to understand it right. And I don't want to sound like neo Amish here, although I'm sure I do a little bit. But the idea is that what you have in technology is that you have light, or you have light with external instruction telling inanimate objects how to shape reality. Okay, you literally have our own golems that we've created. And it's a curious thing, the history of the transistor and some of these things that were made, they seem to come out of the ether. And this is the history I want to tell you, because Harry Truman had one great quote precisely, which is that the only thing you ever get to learn that's a secret is the history you were never allowed to learn. And if you go back in time through all the secret societies, let's go back to Germany for a moment. You go back to the SS and to the Thule Society and to the Anunnaki organization. What they were doing is they were conjuring different spirits, and they were figuring out different ways to open portals. You may have heard of the Philadelphia experiment as the American equivalent. What they were doing was figuring out ways and getting instructions to build machines, boxes that could talk. They were doing the same thing that you think of as a witching hat. Isn't that different than the technology you and I are using today? Why you think my iPhone has an apple with a bite out of the back of it? we're using ultimately a hostile technology to go ahead and put out a better message. But this is the reality of it. And what's really interesting is if you start getting deeper, you find there's a spiritual component to this, that literally what they were doing. And remember, the Germans used the swastika as a symbol. The swastika went back to ancient Hindu studies, to the Vedics. And if you start researching the history of occultism, go back behind Aleister Crowley and Alice Bailey, go back to, Helena Blavatsky, what you realize is the knowledge they were taking was Hindu knowledge of magics that were used, and Eastern occultist paganism that literally underwrites most of what Western occultism is. And that you can actually trace that back through Solomon. If you want, you can trace it back, actually. You can trace it back to Solomon and to the Queen of Sheba, who adopted this through the, what would be the Hamite line. You can go back further to Cush, and then you go back as far as I think you can before or after the flood, to the argument of Nimrod and Semiramis. If you haven't heard these names, it's no accident, because you're not allowed to know the archaeology of your own past. But suffice it to say that there's ultimately always been two choices. There's been the idea that you ascend to a higher level, that you embrace your soul, you become a spirit-filled being, and that you go ahead and find your way to heaven. That's what Christ taught. That's Christianity, and that's why Christianity is the true religion, even though there were suggestions in other religions that would come around. The other choice was anything that went ahead and said this world is the real place, and that this is more than a testing ground. Because remember, you are more than this clay. You are more than your hands and your physical being. You are literally the ability to create reality around you, and your body, as much as you love it and think of it as part of you, is just a part that you are using. And if you've ever had an out-of-body experience, this is a lot easier to explain, but you begin to understand that your consciousness and awareness is something independent to some extent from this body, which is what you're here. You're in a testing ground, and the test is to figure out what you're going to do. And so ultimately, you can be pushed and you can be prodded in certain ways, but you can go ahead and assert some sort of consent and some sort of conscious resistance. Now, will people be killed for resisting? Yes. But if someone knows why they're doing it and they stay forward, that is the only safety and security you have. And once you begin to understand the world through that light, you begin to understand every battle a lot differently. You understand that what we are fighting is not a left-right battle, really. That we're not really fighting a white-black battle or anything. What we're fighting for is this idea that we're going to have human sovereignty continue, and that we are going to not go ahead and be submitted to a system that will make us into less of that. And so why would people do that? Some very smart people who've read a lot of really obscure texts, and you could read them if you want. I'll start rattling some of them off during my library. Manly P. Hall's The Secret Teaching of All Ages, Helena Blavatsky, it was A Secret Incantation, if I remember right's the name of it. The Secret Doctrine. I apologize for it. You could read Alice Bailey, The Creation of the Cosmic Fire. All this stuff is out there. This is what they read. This is what they worship. And why do they worship it? Because they want to live forever. So you can talk on one level about Pizzagate and adrenochrome and all that crap. And yeah, that's true. They go ahead and do that. But fundamentally, that's low-level stuff. The real game is to go ahead and open things up and to figure out a way where we can live as we are forever, and that we would accept, as Milton once said, "'Tis better to reign in hell than rule," or excuse me, "'tis better to reign in hell than to serve in heaven." These are the choices you have, and ultimately you could choose to have a servant's heart. You could be happy and go forward and try to serve one another and go ahead and be each other's keepers like Christ taught, or you can go ahead and try to have control and dominion. And the people who are in charge want control and dominion. They're willing to contemplate utterly horrible things. I want to say drink more tea. It's wonderful. Dana gets some really good teas, but that's still too hot for me because I can't really handle hot liquids. Anyway, because I was going through, and I can tell you all these clever things. I was going to come on. I thought last night when I got up, I was going to do a story. I was going to talk about the Pacific Northwest, and I have this idea that maybe the Rockies should link up with Texas, and I was going to go through all that. But ultimately, you probably don't have time for me to tell you all these clever ways to restructure our society that would be exciting to you. You probably have just enough time to get your head right and get in the game. So here's what I would suggest to each and every one of you. Start reading more. Become aware of who you are, what you are. Your history has been stolen from you. You understand that on a facile level, especially if you're coming from the alt-right school, or if you're a Christian, or even if you're a conservative. You understand intuitively that something precious has been lost. All I am asking you to do is to go dig deeper. Figure out the people who have been controlling you. Figure out what their motives are. Figure out what their intentions are, and understand how you want to oppose them. Henry, good to see you. Glad you're here, brother. So, what I wanted to say was that you really need to go ahead and dig deeper, and I'm going to have to do it too. I mean, actually, let me put out a little call for the old Venmo. CVC PRV, buy Tom more books so he can make more interesting videos. Because once you start reading books that are really interesting, these aren't the books that cost $2 or $3 on the shelves, and they're not the books that are still in print. I can find them. Michael A. Hoffman, Secret Societies, and Psychological Warfare. You can find these books that are out there, and you can hunt them down, and you can find the knowledge that has been suppressed from you. And ultimately, what you find is interesting. It's all about shaping perception. All of these things are designed to make you stop thinking of yourself as a spirit-filled being. Why was the church degraded? Why are we pushed into objective views? Why are we given a million distractions? We are given the sound of 1,000 twangling bells so that we don't actually think and consider the world around us. Find the quiet places, find the silent places. That's why I'm out here on the porch with you guys. I've been called to go ahead and share information to awaken people because there's not a lot of time, and I'm trying to help you get your souls right. I'm trying to do everything I can. Let's see, George wrote some. Let's see what he said. The body is a car for the soul. Like all cars, it eventually breaks down. It rocks up against a ditch, and our souls have to step out and hoof it down the road. Absolutely, man. That's all we are on here. We are here, and you got to decide if you're going to upgrade or if you're going to go ahead and just try to duct tape that thing to the end. And in the end, cars break down, bodies break down. I mean, my happy smile is proof that bodies break down, and I don't know how much longer I have in this place. This place is becoming a world where it's hard for a person like me to exist, and I can feel it wearing on me. That's why I'm starting to look like an Old Testament prophet with the gray on the beard here, and I'm embracing it. It's my job at this point in life to share the wisdom I've learned through experience, through reading, and through seeing the way people behave. That's one of the questions people don't ask. There was a young man. Let me tell a little anecdote actually here. There was a young man who we were talking with the other day, Dana and I, friend of the family, and he was just really mad at God. And he was mad at God because why is there evil in this world? Why is there wickedness in this world? And he wanted a good world, but the thing is, he understood, and he's a smart kid, really smart kid, precocious. He understood what was right and wrong, and he understood, at least he had a concept of it. I don't know if he had it perfect, but who does? I certainly don't. And he wanted to speak on this, but the thing is, he didn't understand people, and this is the thing of youth. This is the problem. Youth understands idealism without understanding pragmatism. They don't understand that people are not able to be. That means the wife is here. Hi, Dana. People don't understand that what you're really doing as you get older is you have to understand why people act the way they do and how they go forward over time. We defend things. We defend ourselves from the hurts that happen to us, and we defend ourselves against truths because we're afraid of looking like fools. But honestly, you kind of have to look like a holy fool sometime. If you speak truth, you're going to be attacked and persecuted. If you go ahead and try to liberate your spirit, the world is going to claw you down like some horrible gooey substance. And I can't explain this to him why people would go ahead and be a part of that system, because they're afraid of falling from the precarious perch they found. Because every time you go up, you feel like Icarus. You're getting ready to go up, you have your wax wings, and you start chasing toward the sun, you fall crashing to the earth. And like I said, that's because you're not building foundations. These are the problems you have. So I felt bad for the kid. I really did. Dana would tell you I was a little tough on him. But ultimately, he is no different than we are in the sense that we want to be good. And when the good doesn't happen, we get disappointed. But ultimately, it's not external. The good that we have to find is internal. The cultivation and the war you have to win is not with the world against you, but it's with yourself against the world. And you're going to have to go in there and fight that spiritual battle and clear out your cobwebs. You're going to have to go face all your sins. And I tell you, we all have many. I have more than most people. I claim every one of the 7 deadly sins as my own, and I don't like it. And I know that when I interact with other people, it becomes hell on it. But we are going to have to be better people. We are going to have to purify ourselves to fight what's happening, because what we are dealing with is pestilence. But what is pestilence? Is it a plague? Is it a simple disease? Or is it the degradation of the human entity? We imagine pestilence as a pandemic that kills people. But what if pestilence? Well, then you need to fill up those spaces, brother. I tell you what, I understand that you got no cobwebs, you've got empty spaces. Let your heart be open, man. Look, I wouldn't tell you anything I didn't believe was honestly true. And I know it's difficult, and I know it's contradictory, and it's different than you've been taught. It's different than you think. But it's when you come into it, you understand that there's a deeper spiritual awakening there to be had, and that there is something in you. You are not alone. And if you learn to be quiet and to ask the right questions, questions and listen, you'll find that that happens. You can get those answers, and it ain't going to make you rich, and it may not make you happy, but it might just save your life one day, and that's a pretty good deal. That's what you want. That's the real assurance and the insurance that we need at this time. But it also gives you the strength to see things for what they are, and that's so much of the battle. Sometimes I go to church every Sunday, and I went up and I talked to my pastor, and I asked him to pray for me that I could read the Bible more intelligently and that I could have eyes to see. And I find that in the Bible, you're promised that the one thing you will always get if you ask for it is wisdom. You will get understanding of this world so that you can make decisions, because the purpose of this world is for you to make informed choices. And if you don't understand what's happening around you, you don't make good choices. And that's one of the crises of humanity. That's actually the root of evil, probably. I mean, beyond Satanism and all that, really, the reason why a lot of the petty evils happen is that people think they know things, but they don't. Like, take these kids protesting in the streets. They think they're speaking for good and for fairness and equality. In truth, they're speaking for discord and destruction, but they don't know it because they don't really have the context to understand, because they never thought to ask any questions. They did as they were told. And you can't ever be someone who does what you're being told unless you understand why you're doing it. And that's the crisis that never happened to them, because they never were taught how to learn on their own. They had parents who were gone because they were working, or they were playing with technology, or they were having affairs, or whatever. Or maybe they were just trying to be responsible. I mean, do you think a two-parent family who neglects their children to provide for their material welfare is any less responsible than a negligent deadbeat parent? You're wrong. Your children need your attention. People need your investment. Tolerance as a religion, where you say you're going to permit anything and allow everything, is nothing more than neglect. Benign neglect isn't a religion. It's a death sentence. But people don't get that. They don't understand that, and they don't understand that you have to go out there and speak for truth. And I understand this is a radically different worldview. We grow up in a society where we are taught ruthlessly by our Masonic founders. The separation in church and state is the key element of the American nation that made it work. It made us wealthy. It made us powerful. It made us strong. In a sense, we can impose our will on others, but it did actually make us good. I would argue that our degradation's been going on a very, very long time, because we do not know why we do what we do. Oh, we say we have liberties and we enjoy having freedom, and liberty's useful. I support natural law. God gave us that as a gift so that we could understand the world more fully. But what I would say in addition to that, beyond that, is that natural law used in servants of bad only ends up to a freedom that approaches anarchy. And as you see those A symbols, which are just basically converted pentagrams, that's the other thing. If you learn how to look, and I know I shoot off a million ideas a minute, and sometimes it's like drinking from a fire hose, and you guys got to go back and pull it out, but this is how my mind works. It just connects dots, bam, 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 bam. That ultimately, you see the symbolic language of what's out there, and that's always the tell. If you don't know how to read the language of what's being said to you, you might miss the thing. It's like if I were to speak in French, what I would say would not make perfect sense, because I would miss certain verbs, I would miss certain subtext. The same way in the way that people use language against us, in the language of consciousness and of symbols, and that's what occultism is ultimately. That you use control through different symbols and methodologies that go ahead and hide things in front of you. But what you have to learn is how to read those things and how to fight through those things. And what we haven't done is we've gone away from the idea of righteousness. And I want to talk about this. I learned something. I mentioned it, but it definitely bears repeating because it's stuck with me. Is that is violence physical aggression, or is violence unrighteousness against what should be? And you need to go ahead je ne parle trop, je parle un peu bien, mais je ne parle, much these days. Unfortunately, chaque jour, because I don't have time. Unfortunately, I have to read a lot, and I don't have the pleasure of French, which one day, God willing, if we ever have a peaceful time of tranquility, I will pick it back up. It's a beautiful language. I love it. My distraction aside. Exactly, that was terrible. I know it. And the concepts are hard enough to express in English, which my command of is failing even at that. What we have to do is we have to recognize that the question we're asking ourselves is our job to fight for righteousness, or is it to fight for structure? And this is the same thing. Are you fighting for your body, or are you fighting for your soul? Are you fighting for the idea of what is right, Or are you fighting for a system to manage it? Are you fighting for the idea of something greater, or are you fighting for a system to make everyone comfortable? And if you're willing to go ahead and fight for that, you are going to end up being very radical. And if you are willing to accept the consequences of this, you will begin to realize you are willing to contemplate great and terrible things for the purposes of advancing the faith. And I say this not in terms of saying that you have to believe in the Christian religion, but I'm saying if you believe souls have meaning and that life has purpose, then you start to understand, especially if you spend time in nature like I do, that there are far worse things than just going ahead and suffering. We have these nice, convenient arrangements, the NAP, economics, all these things that say, okay, well, I can exist in this box, in this box, in this box, and we build little holes into which we are held, but they basically are prisons in which we trap ourselves, and a gilded cage is no less of a cage. And if you are allowed to be trapped in any cage, no matter how comfortable, how beautiful, how ugly, how totalitarian, how libertarian it is, what are you kept away from? All the truth that's around that you're not even allowed to consider and look at. And that's been the struggle of the last 200-300 years, that once upon a time we were a society dedicated to truth. Then we became a society that was dedicated to our own self-betterment. We became a society dedicated to man and the idea that we are the apotheosis, the highest level of existence, that we would go ahead and recognize that, and that we would try to celebrate and enshrine that to set ourselves up as idols. And in fact, we reduced Jesus to man, we adopted Eastern religions, and we did all these things deliberately because we realized God was too high of a goal, so we would make it heaven of earth. Belinda Carlisle's future, But ultimately, it was never that case. And that now we are seeing the consequences of that degradation in the sense that we have made Faustian bargains, each and every one of us. And when Mephistopheles comes knocking at your door and says, hey, here's the injection to be upgraded to 2.0, that's when you're going to have to make your choice of where you stand and what you believe. And I suspect there's going to be a lot of people, a strong remnant, who's going to stand against that. And I'm going to offer such leadership and voice as I can to that. That's what the struggle is now. It's bigger than that. And will I work with people? You bet. I'm going to work with everyone who will work with me, and I'm going to help people in different areas, because it's not a matter of just one person going or one community going. This is a far bigger struggle when we're already behind. We're going to need a lot of miracles, which means we're going to need prayer warriors, and we're going to need things to go differently than people expect. I know the world I'm describing to you probably sounds nothing like what anyone else is describing anywhere else in the world, but take your own logic test. You tell me if what I'm telling you makes sense, and if it doesn't, tell me why it doesn't, and if it does, tell me what you think the conclusions are of it. But that's what I want you to understand, that we are in fights that are so much larger than our ability to understand, and no one is honestly telling you what's at stake. Eternity is at stake for each and every one of us. Are you willing to go ahead and step up to that fight? Is it a political fight? Yeah. Is it an economic fight? Yeah, but fundamentally it's a spiritual fight, and everything else stems from that. When you study this, and I'm a cultural historian, so this is where I come from, I always tell you that politics is downwind of culture. But it's equally true that culture is downwind from faith, because your truths are based upon what you believe. Your beliefs are what shape your society, and the systems that emerge from that are how you understand the way your world works and what you work with. And economics is that, but economics is also a religion, because it's caught up in the false worship of money, which is just one more way to control people. So what does it all mean? It means it's going to be an interesting couple years, and I'll tell you, I think that we may only be a few months away from things really being expedited. The fact that the CDC took down a site that was just offering a reasonable argument for hydroxychloroquine because it was going against the agenda, to me says that this vaccination is not only happening, but it's happening quickly, and no matter how voluntary they call it, it'll start out voluntary for the first 80% who take it, and then once they have the ability to compel them, the other 20% of us are going to have to deal with hell on earth, because we are going to be forced onto reservations. We are going to be forced to eke out an existence, assuming they don't directly target and attack us. And they will, by the way. This is coming, and it doesn't matter who you go ahead and support. This isn't a Trump-Biden issue. Look, Biden will kill you for being white. That's true. And he will kill you for speaking up. But Trump will go ahead and just make you into a slave for his masters that he goes through. And what we should have learned, is that no politician is going to save us. And look, I'm a politician. I'm not going to save you, but I might help you save yourself if you're willing to listen, and I'm willing to stand beside you in a foxhole and pick this fight. I think that we don't have a lot of choice, and I'm going to go ahead and advance the efforts of Free Atlantic, the Free Atlantic Radio, as well as the Atlantic Nation in doing this. And I will do everything I can to help our brothers and sisters throughout the United States and Canada especially, but throughout the world, especially the English-speaking world. I know we got some Aussies and whatnot. You guys, we can kind of talk to one another. And for those who are in other areas, I don't think the Chinese have a lot of choices. Indians. I don't know. We'll see. I mean, and all this is going to happen at the time that there's other fights going on, and with the second launch of, if there's a second wave of this, and I suspect there will be. I always have suspected that we will see there will be an overwhelming cry to do this, and I think it's an interesting thing. One of the things that you don't realize about why this is going at the pace it's going, and why the lockdowns and all this are happening, goes back to that question of consciousness and choice. It isn't enough for the people who run the system to go ahead and mandate you take the vaccine. They need you to demand to them you give it to them, or that they give it to you. They want that, because why? Then you made free choice. The choices you make have consequences. Do not let anyone persuade you, convince you otherwise, that what you do is not relevant. It's immensely relevant. And everything you see around you, all these theatrics, are structured to create one terrible decision, where you are making a decision that looks right but feels wrong, where you're trying to go ahead and save your life at the cost of a death you don't even want to contemplate, and you don't know it. You're not permitted to know it. I mean, the information's out there, but unless you look for it, you won't find it. And unless someone happens to catch you, and that's the mission for all of us, you won't realize the choice you're making. And they don't tell you. They say, oh, yeah, it's a new technology. Well, what is the new technology? Oh, it's really good. Oh, okay, I like really good. I'm for. Ask questions. I ask questions like crazy with Coronavirus Central. I thought we were dealing with a pandemic that might be killing humanity. I found that it's something deeper, it's something darker, it's something more sinister. It's something that's been afloat for a very long time. And look at it, the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. The woman goes around, Melinda Gates goes around giving these TED Talks with an upside-down cross. That's a satanic symbol right in front of you, talking about how, yeah, we're going to control the world population, how they've been kicked out of different countries for causing people to starve, how they've been working on this vaccine for 10 years, and I guarantee you they're beta testing whatever they want to do in Africa. And if some people end up dying, they don't really care. I mean, they probably want a couple people to die, but hey, it saved us, it's controlled us, because ultimately they need you afraid and they need you not thinking. What are the values of the Atlantic nation? Reason and nature. Nature means also keeping the fact that you are a natural being of this planet, of this earth, of this realm of being. And reason is asking questions of what you are taking in. We do all these things. I mean, haven't we gotten the habit, like terms of service, right? You sign a terms of service. Does anyone actually read that legalese and everything we're giving away? No. We constantly are signing ourselves away, signing contract after contract, binding ourselves in chains heavier than Jacob Marley's. And we don't have any idea what we're doing at any times. And at this point, I would remind you of the end of Faust, how it ended up working. You can always cheat the devil because the Lord's willing to forgive. That's the grace. That's the trick. And we're going to get tricked over and over and over and over again. It's inevitable. We have no choice of going around that because we're dealing with supernatural forces. And yet, if the Lord is faithful, we got a shot. That's what we got. We got each other if we're faithful to one another. And I welcome you to come along. And, I have really struggled. In a lot of years, I've talked politics and I've done alliances, right? Where I'll work with this group and I'll work with that group. But here's what I can't do. I'll work with anyone. If you support liberty, that's good enough. If you're someone who, if it's a Christian, it's easier. But ultimately, I am doing this because of what I believe, not in spite of what I believe or in background of what I believe. What I believe is leading the way because it's what's giving me the insight to do this. And I'm not going to put the Lord in the back seat, man. That's not it. I'm just getting on the train and I'm be like, look, I'm throwing ropes off the back. And if you can grab one and catch on, God bless you. Come along with us because we're moving fast these days. We don't have a choice. And it's not us that are determining it. We're just running ahead of the behemoth behind us. Wormwood, Abyss, they're all back there. They're coming. And you can see it. Is it World War III? Is it the red horse of death? I don't know. Is it the sickly horse of pestilence? Could be. That's what we're told. They did crazy things. And if you start to research these things, it's interesting. I talked about the Eastern religions. We mentioned CERN the other day on the broadcast. We were talking about the 666 symbol that was in front of that. They opened portals to a netherworld where people were locked away, where energetic beings were put where they did not belong here, transdimensional entities. So when you see aliens starting to be talked about, understand that these technologies that are being given with a price. They're given as control mechanisms to be used to go ahead and open up controllers that are coming from different places. The Lord said we'd be wrestling with powers and principalities. Dana was telling me there's some new ones that have been unleashed, and that we would expect these things in end times as we are the last generation, potentially. I actually believe that at this point, that we are doing that, and so we will have to fight against those things. And we don't even have the context. We're looking at a world where we don't understand what we're seeing. And you don't understand it because you were educated just to have a very rudimentary education. I mean, and I'll give you a simple litmus test if you want, if you question me. Go and read a textbook from 100 years ago. Doesn't matter what subject. Look at the quality of the language, the depth of the thought, the ideas that were exposed. We have been educated to be less intelligent. That's why we're doing things in video, by the way. Video is a less quality form to get out there to have ideas. I just do it because I know people require that. Audio is a little bit better because you at least have to listen to the concepts and you don't have to focus on, whatever the person looks like. The fact that I'm bumming around in a t-shirt early this morning, is a distraction because I always get people say, oh, it's a really great message, but Tom, why don't you go ahead and look like, at 6 in the morning that you're going out there and you're getting ready to fight a revolution, because it's 6 in the damn morning. This is me as I am. But books are even better because books let you give the shaping and the context of it is. So you have to go learn to read. But what does social media and all this do? Dopamine-driven addictions where you can't sit there and read a book. It kills me to read 50 pages. And I have a library that probably at this point is well into the hundreds of thousands of pages. Let's put it that way. If we're not over a million, I wouldn't be surprised. These are the sort of struggles we're looking at, and these are the battles you have to awaken to, and you're going to have to demand more of yourself. And I know you don't want to do that, and by more, I don't mean make more money. I don't mean play better in the system. You're going to have to become a force of nature to be reckoned with. Part of that's being more physically fit, which I suck at, by the way, and thank you to all my friends who remind me that I need to go do something about that. I mean, my stress level's through the roof because I'm doing something that's very hard for me. I'm by nature a more reclusive person than this. That's part of it, but the bigger part of it is actually training your mind and training yourself to understand what you're seeing and knowing how to ask better questions. So as we go forward here, let me give you a preview for the next couple months because people always want to know, how is it going to affect me. System will be set up with the right connection of carrots and sticks to go ahead and get people to submit to the system. I have zero doubt that that's what the actual end game is a control mechanism that allows people to be separated, to be chipped, and everything will be used against it. My soul tells me, my instincts, my intuition, whatever you want to call it, tells me that children will play a big role. The fact that children have been kept safe has been a big part of the story all around, and the idea that they need to be kept safe will be at the heart of it. Look for kids to be the lever by which people are compelled to act, and when people are unwilling to go ahead and do so, that literally parents will be set against those who choose not to because they're going to think their kids are at risk. If there was a second plague, it should target kids, and that's a terrible thing to say, but honestly, that would probably work. Will it go that way? It may not have to. It may not have to be that ugly because people are that pliant, and in some ways, ironically, we may avoid some of the worst outcomes because of that. But ultimately, we are going to have to figure out a way that we're going to offer resistance to this. And what does that ultimately have to include? It has to include sovereignty in an area where you cannot be compelled to go ahead and take nanotechnology, RFD, or ongoing tracking. We have to undo the Patriot Act. We have to undo, the basic destruction of the Fourth Amendment. And we're going to need our own nation to do it. And whomever, wherever is willing to do that, now your soul's on the line. So you have to start thinking what really is important to you. Because it isn't just a matter of, looking for the welfare of your kids. Because the welfare of your kids is gone if you don't have a free and independent country that can defend itself to the teeth against a world that's going to be hostile to it. And even then, that might not be enough because in the end, it's said that it's going to be a very ugly campaign. But that if the hand of the Lord is over us, who knows, America was founded as a New Jerusalem, and the idea that we would go ahead and succeed in these things is actually within our capacity. And I know that everything I'm explaining to you at this point is probably far beyond where any of you have been thinking. This is where my mind is actually at in terms of the cutting edge of what I am worried about based upon what I am seeing, because the whole time they've been watching us, I've been trying to watch them and seeing what they're putting out there, why they're doing it, who's in charge, and what the elites are doing. And I've been digging deep down dark alleys. I literally feel like Gandalf sitting in the basement in Gondor. I'm sitting here reading these old texts, about these rings and what was happening, like what was the purpose? What was Melchior trying to do when he went ahead and gave the power over to Sauron? I know the back history. I've read the Silmarillion. I've read all these things. And actually, I learned something really interesting from my friend Kanaz, who does a great job, by the way, with Free Atlantic Voices. It was Tolkien who converted C.S. Lewis. And C.S. Lewis ended up being a great missionary, actually, in his work with Mere Christianity and other books. But it's really fascinating that it was in searching for these things you discover when you're searching for how you're being tricked, sometimes you find truth. And truth is tricky. Truth will get away from you. And that's why you have to ask a lot of questions. And that's what wisdom is, knowing what you don't know. And I know that I know. The more I learn, the less I know. It's an irony, but the more you become aware of the ineffable knowledge that's out there. But we don't ask that because we're not allowed to critically think. And this is the magic of what we say here in the Atlantic nations: settle for better. When you're looking to be better, you're always looking for self-improvement. It's a process, understanding you are incapable of reaching the goal. The ineffable is the ineffable, but it's in service to that you become a better being, and that open yourself to the possibility of being something greater once your soul goes ahead and goes on to the next stage in evolution, which is heaven. And that's the opportunity you have. Or alternatively, you say this is the best you can get, make the best of it, and try to ride it out. But if you choose to act like a slug, don't be surprised when you get squashed like one. These are the choices that you have to have. It is revealed truth over scientific truth. And I will tell you a secret, Jared, because you said something very smart there. Scientific truth, research how Darwin got some of his information, research all these people. You would be stunned at the amount of ideas that came as dreams in the night or voices in their mind. A lot of our brilliant people, and I don't want to take anything away from their efforts, but fundamentally, a lot of our really huge advances in science and this idea that rationalism and empiricism will save us are caught up in the occult mysticism. It remains true and has been for a very long way. What is technology? It's taking light, capturing it, a snapshot at a given point in time, to examine all the rules about it and making conclusions based on that to change the way material reality exists. But Heisenberg's own uncertainty principle tells you the deeper truth of it. The consciousness is the impacting entity, because when you look at an experiment, you change it. You being there changes the universe. So what is it? It is experienced reality, and science proves it. That's why poets and physicists aren't supposed to talk to each other. But if you really start to look at high-level physics, it starts to look a lot like a philosophy course. And have you ever wondered why we stopped at Newtonian physics and why we don't know why those triangle craft operate as they do? Tesla found the secrets. He started figuring out how number patterns work. In that 0, 9, it's called circular numbers, I think. And it's the basis of binary math if you understand it. Think of it. You go 1, 2, 4, 8. 16, which is 5, 7, 32, which is 5, 64, which is 1, okay, 128, 1 and 2 and 8 is 11, so you're at 2, 256, 2 and 5 and 6 is 13, which is 4, so it goes over and over again. It's a repeating pattern, and that's all it is. And you find these patterns. If you understand the patterns, you can start to see the way reality works, and that there's certain wings and resonancies that you can create through energy waveforms can make things go forever. So it's just 1, 2, 4, 8, 7, 5. I think I'm doing it right. So, and you can do these, and if you start mapping them on a chart, what you find is there are 3 numbers that are never included: 3, 6, and 9. 9's the perfect reflection of itself, 3 is the Trinity, and 6 is the opposition. What you literally learn to find is you can figure out the way things work, and you see the patterns. And so when you see they have these different cycles out there, what are they trying to do? They're trying to trap you into reality. I'll give you an example. 666, the number of the beast. What is it? Do you know it's the sum of the squares of the first prime numbers? If you were to take the sum of the squares of 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, 13, and 17, you end up with 666. Well, what is that? It's the numbers that don't repeat. It is the ending in the system. It is those numbers which are dead ends. And that ultimately the numbers that continue are the Fibonacci sequence. 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. And I know I sound like a total autist doing this, but this is what the people who really understand the world, they stare at number patterns too, because mathematics, going all the way back to Pythagoras, to the start of Western civilization, was the way we tried to understand truth. And it's no accident that the Gospel of Luke is written for the Greek Neoplatonic mind, because it was the effort to reconcile, as Paul did ably in his various epistles, that what we were doing was we understood that the mathematical reality reflects the spiritual reality, reflects the Gospels, and that this was the basis and the foundation of Western civilization, that we were seeking truth in all of its forms, trying to go forward. But the sort of illuminated pyramid that you see of the Illuminati is an inversion, where really it goes down to the bottom, and they're just trying to control it from there. That's why you see the Star of David is set up the way it is, actually, because they realize the use of one thing in service to another. And it's interesting how all these places came out of the mystic schools of Central Europe, whether it be Vienna, whether it be Prague or Munich. Over and over again, people were researching forbidden knowledge at the intersection of Catholicism, Protestantism, and mysticism. So what was it? It was conjuring, it was legalism, and it was ritualism, and that those sort of things all came together to go ahead and spread these sort of secrets. And they just went deeper and darker, and they found other magics, and they grabbed them, and they created a pantheism that works for all of them, because ultimately paganism is paganism. What it is there's one truth and there's a whole lot of lies. and Satan was the father of lies, and all these different lies came out in different forms. So whatever area you grab them from, you have to think, well, what is soul affirming? What allows you to go forward? What allows you to see truth? And if something doesn't hold true, apply the scientific method, apply it to spirituality. If it doesn't hold true, then it must fall apart. And for souls to exist as consciousness and to advance, what do we have to do? We have to be able to have control over our own existence. And how do we have that? By choosing how we respond to the stimuli given us. We're in a soul trap. Can you find your way out of it? And you know, a lot of people, to my young friend Kenny, who didn't understand this, I would say this: Jesus is a rescue mission. We are already in prison. It's, can you get bailed out of here? Because the law and the dominion, as you've realized, this world is a fallen world. Why that happened is caught up in ancient prehistory. That's another thing you're never going to be allowed to know. I search for it and I seek for it. I think a lot of people found a lot of things in the Victorian era, and that's why you had all those archaeologists like the Indiana Jones movies. Do I know the history of it? No, I don't, but there's some amazing people. Trey Smith is someone to check out if you want. And it's really interesting. The dude is literally reading from the protocols, and he's saying there's this strange book out there that talks about control of people. Of course, he doesn't mention names, and why would you? But ultimately, you begin looking for deeper and deeper knowledges, but it's deeper than just one group of people. It is a force of dominion that's designed to hold people underneath. So what is the end game of it? That ultimately, a system where your thoughts are not your own and where you'll never have the wrong thoughts. So when you look out there and we look at the technological future promised us, RFID embedded chips, nanotech that keeps us healthy, direct uploads to the 5G network, you know, from our brain. Elon Musk has been talking about that. What are we looking at? We are looking at being nodes in a network. The beast system, you know, there's videos about it. And people make fun of Christians, like, oh, they don't understand what's happening. No, wrong. They understand perfectly what's happening. They may not have the empirical objective language to put it together, but this is what it's about. It's always been about that. The battle of reality is that evil has been trying to convince good that humanity was a mistake. And the only way they can do so is for humanity to so degrade itself that humanity gets erased and that no one survives. That's what the battle of existence really is about. And so you win or lose that battle based upon who you choose to be and how you choose to behave and why you do things. And it's not just what you do. We always imagine what you do matters because we're caught up in physical reality. It's why you do things. If you were to kill someone, it would be bad. If you were to kill someone who was raping a little child, it would be a lot less bad. If you were to kill someone about to kill 10,000 people, it would be a lot bad. Less bad. If you were to kill someone who was going to degrade everything that has meaning in society to the point where people were no longer people and souls lost eternity, well, you might just be a hero. Can you imagine that? That's where your mind will go if you really understand this. And the logic is not flawed. And the logic will be like, well, you're making an assumption. No, I'm observing reality. I'm telling you what has been the case for thousands of years, and you're saying, well, I don't like that, so that doesn't work. Okay, we'll disprove it. I can't disprove it. No, of course you can't. Well, it's not true because I can't disprove it. That's where it gets tricky. And I'm not telling you to believe things exactly. You know, you have to decide this for yourself. I'm giving you a lot of tools, and I'm lighting up a lot of steps for you. And I agree, Contrarium. That is the conclusion of Gates. And look, some of these people, they believe, by the way, they believe you're elites, you're transhumanists. You're neoliberals who throw money at the unwashed mobs to go nuts. They believe they're advancing humanity. They believe they're achieving, some of them very sincerely believe they're achieving the advancement of humanity. They worship Lucifer, Lucifer being the light bringer. And the idea, Lucifer, to put it in a different sense, in sense of make more sense to you guys, is the Greek persona of Prometheus, right? And there's different names for these people, but ultimately the one who stole fire from the heavens to give to God. If you want to go back and study it in the demonology tradition, I believe his name would be Azazel. And don't say names of demons unless you know what you're doing. But ultimately this idea that, you know, secret knowledge was brought down, and you can trace it back through the Book of Enoch and other chess texts like Jasher, where what they were doing was that man was given knowledge of how not to have garden, but have arms and to have technology and to fight one another. And what you notice if you read the ancient prehistories is every time man was taken from the garden and given tools to attack, do you get happy when you leave the garden, when you're part of the earth, when you're part of the creation that was designed for you, and you go ahead and you fight over one another? You're trying to escape and to rise above. That's what it is. That's what paganism is. It's a two-part religion. Spencer Smith does a great job on this. He's a little bit hardcore for people who don't come from a Christian background, but he nailed it in Third Adam, that it's really a combination of two things in mystery religion. It's the idea that you have the service of the serpent, right, which is the promise of forbidden secret esoteric knowledge, And the temple, which is the pyramid, the ziggurat, you see that was all around the ancient world. What was the belief of it? That we could go ahead and reach to heaven if we just built a high enough structure. And mind you, those structures are just symbolic, but they were symbolic that they were put on ley lines to build the awareness inside where your consciousness could go ahead and reach the Godhead and try to challenge them. And they're all heresies. And what led them? Well, if you notice, you'll see in all these ancient religions, there was a woman who was wearing a crown with spikes, just like our Statue of Liberty was gifted to us. What was that? It was the promise of knowledge of the Scarlet Woman who you see in the Apocalypse. That ultimately, and you can read it in different places, that there was this character out there, the mystery religion, that promised to have all these things, and in fact lived off the degradation of that which was good. This is a lot to process, by the way, and it probably doesn't hold together as well when I present it as it does in my mind, but I'm giving you crumbs so you can go find what you want. And it's okay. Maybe I'm just Tom the crazy guy, and who knows? This is why you become a coot up in the cabin, because you're willing to go out there and you're willing to ask questions. But I tell you what, the world makes a lot more sense to me than it does a lot of people. And I can predict things pretty well because I know how to look at these questions. And so I wanted to go ahead and share some of this information with you so that you have an opportunity to consider facts that are out there, you know. The same, and thank you, Dana, for sharing those links. I really appreciate it. The same fundamental human problems exist regardless of human technological achievement. Absolutely. Technology, in the end, as long as it's not self-sovereign, which is a different issue, is just a tool to be used. But the idea that tools will somehow change our nature is absolutely false. We are not that far evolved from our ancestors, and good for us that we're not, because honestly, we are a divinely created being. The universe itself is a very improbable thing, you know, that everything we're experiencing in time, and time is an illusion, by the way, I want you to understand that. Time is a lagging effect of consciousness that happens, that gives purposes. It's how we communicate with one another and try to escape. You know, think of us as all little lights bouncing around against each other, and some of us can somehow get out and some of us don't. And, you know, when you get stuck, what ends up happening is hell, reincarnation, and these things. I don't know. You know, the book says it's a burning pit. I'm going to take belief in that for the time being. But I don't know. I don't know all the answers to it, and that's why I look for things that are much more, you know, larger, deeper wisdom. And what I will tell you is the answers that you're seeking, if these are your questions you're asking, and they may not be, and that's okay if they're not. That's why I don't do this on the air for the main audience, is that the answers are backward, not forward. And you're going to have to look because they've been hidden from you, because the people who know them understand that truth is power. And when you understand things as they are and not as you want them to be, you have the ability to change reality, and that you literally become the ones who shape what the future looks like. And we have not been permitted to shape it. You know, and that's what I was saying to people. I was having this conversation, actually. I was talking with someone, smart guy, a good Christian too, but he was telling me how the Pacific Northwest was going to be great and we were going to have problems. But I was like, no, you have it backwards for one reason. A people is not an ideology. A people is not a political party. A people are a group of people who come together on core, deep-found beliefs. And politics is not a deep-found belief. It's a pragmatic system of organization that, you know, it's theirs. I would go so far as, let's see what Howland, right? I would go so far as to say the truth is not their power, but ours. Yes, sir, you nailed it. That is well said. That what they have are conventions, falsities that are presented as truth with a lowercase d, but we have truths that we can hold on, and all you have to do is prove them wrong once. This is the miracle of the light, right? One candle defeats infinite darkness. One soul defeats the degradation of the whole world. Noah did. We can do that again. And we have to do that again. And so this is the awakening. This is the spiritual warfare. And will it have a physical component? Of course it will. Because you know what? We exist on different planes at once. And will people die? Yes. Will there be suffering? Yes. Will there be defeats? Yes. But ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, the victory is ours. That's promised if only you have the courage to see it through. And so this is what it's about. It's about faith, fidelity, and family. You're going to have to go ahead and be much stronger, much tougher, much smarter, much better. You are going to have to become a spirit-filled being. And how you get there, that's what you'll have to discover for yourself. I'm going to give you hints, and I'm going to go ahead and do this. Some people are always awakening, others are always going to sleep. Yeah, some people decide they're not equal to the challenge. Every one of us has days like that. I do. I certainly am not exempting myself from it. Days where I just want to hide from the world and not deal with it. But that's why we got to lift each other up, and that's why loyalty and grace are core values of what we do in this Atlantic Project. You know, I always tell this story, but it's a true story. When I decided I was going to put this together and I said what a king should be, I was thinking about it. I was like, you need to be able to do this and be wise and see the future and look ahead and do those things. And I was like, give me that wisdom and I will try to do the best I can. Not because I necessarily want to lead people into these battles, but because I want to lead people into a position where they can go ahead and still be people. That's why I have to grow the Aragorn beard out, because we who understand things, who have knowledge of it, now have a moral obligation to act. And your moral obligation doesn't end because it's inconvenient or because there's consequence. I mean, I've learned that a long time ago, and I'm not going to lie to you. It's going to suck. It's going to be miserable. It's going to be awful, and you're going to hate it. Nonetheless, it's necessary, and that's where we're at. And those are the sort of questions we have to do. And so, what am I going to have to do in the coming months? I'm going to have to make this Free Atlantic project way bigger. I'm probably going to have to order a lot more flags. And if anyone wants to buy one, I'm selling them for 20 a piece. So that will include shipping to the domestic U.S. If you're in Canada, it'll probably have to be like 30 because it costs more to ship things up there. But ultimately, we'll do that, and we will just get people awakened. And I've been going on Christian shows. People aren't aware of it because I don't talk about it, because I don't want good people to get canceled. And I will talk to people all throughout the spectrum, including people who are on the left who are just misled. And they'll hate me and they'll attack me, but you know what? You'll see the nature of who they are versus the nature of what we're trying to do by doing that. And that will give an opportunity for people to awaken who watch those shows and understand. And that's the sort of persecution you have to be willing to take. You don't have to take that people are going to come in and attack you. If they're going to attack you, you defend yourself, you fight back. If they try to kill you, look, I'll tell you the truth, I'm shooting back. That's just me. I could be wrong. Lord, forgive me if I am. But ultimately, the goal at this point is to awaken people and make clear through our actions and through our moral carriage that we are the ones who are trying to do the right thing, and recognize that we're fighting a battle with global scope at this point, because there's no way these things are not connected. The same forces that are happening in the U.S. are happening in China. They're happening throughout the world, and we're being manipulated into fights that, don't really serve the interest of any of us individually. But collectively, what do? Well, they create a world where people can be controlled, and some people are betting that they'll be allowed to have special preeminence in that world. That is the hierarchy of elites we're dealing with, that they have gone ahead and sold us all out to Satan for the idea that they will have complete control, and so we will have a hierarchy against them, and we will stand up as an army of saints. That's what is said in the last days, that it will be that the prophets will arise and the saints will talk, and that's who we are. We are the saints. We're not the Latter-day Saints. I'm not a Mormon, but we are literally, although, who knows how that all goes. I don't really believe what they're thinking with Moroni, but that's neither here nor there. That's a whole nother episode. Maybe they'll do their part. I'm sure they're at least willing to fight for things. But ultimately, that's what we are dealing with, that we are dealing with battle at that level, where your ability to have clear perception, to see the world. I mean, just think about it for a second. You're going to have a 5G world where you're going to have, all these things radiated into you. And, you respond to radio waves. You don't believe it? Get old and have a cold and rainy day. Your body feels different. Or stare at a screen and watch what happens to your eyes. Or, listen to music. See if a minor key doesn't make you feel sad when a major key lifts you up. There are all these things, and we like to pretend that we are not, receptors for all these things, but we are. And unless you're aware something's being done to you, you cannot go ahead and defend against it. So the battle now is for awareness, and hopefully my various long-winded rants will help provide something for it, because I suspect that, Dane and I probably will not be long for this world, given the way things are shaking. And maybe if we're lucky, we get raptured out, but I personally don't really believe in pre-trib rapture. That's just my thought for those who are Christian. I actually think we're going to be here for it, but I don't think that a voice like mine is going to be allowed to go around very long. So these are historical record for some of the things I wanted people to know. So if anything ever happens to us, that you could be aware what we were looking on and why we get silenced, and whether that means you can't find us on the internet or you just can't find us. It's ultimately the same story, isn't it? And it doesn't matter. I'm not afraid. It's like I said, they can only make you die once, and I'm not afraid to die once. I don't want to do it. I'll be here as long as I can be. I like talking to you guys. I like awakening people. I like sharing what I really research. This is what I do in my spare time. This is what I enjoy. I don't really enjoy all the little microcosm, legalisms. I'm good at it, but it's not what I'm really about. What I'm about is trying to, kindle a spirit, a flame that is meaningful, not just steal the flame, but actually recognize the flame within. So I don't know. Hopefully it was a good episode for you guys. Hopefully it was interesting. I know I'm trying to get a little bit of extra content out after Thursday of next week. I am going to be on sort of a limited availability for a little bit. We'll have the morning podcast. I will make that happen. But I have some things I have to do up here in preparation, as well as with Dana's health, that will preclude my presence as much as it has been. I will do a weekend show though with a mailbag. If any of this or anything not related to this is interesting, throw me good questions. You throw me good questions, you get a good podcast. You throw me lousy questions, you don't get as good of a podcast. You throw me no questions, I get the weekend off. Yay me. Anyway, God bless each and every one of you. I'm going to say a quick prayer. If you have any last minute questions, since I am doing this live, I will theoretically be on at 7 o'clock tonight. We'll see if that happens. I'm planning to do it, but you never know. There's always a small chance. I'll throw it up in the afternoon if I'm going to the link for it. So, a quick prayer. Heavenly Father, we pray that you lead all of us toward the light, that you lead us toward your wisdom, that you hope that you will allow us to see things for what they are. I pray that the vision you allow be shared with everyone who seeks it, that they can understand the world around them and they can make good choices and not be led by delusion into false choices, because we know you are true. You always keep your word. In Jesus' name, I thank you for this. Amen. So, simple prayer today. We don't have too much here. What is your position on agnostics and the non-religious joining New Albion, assuming they're of good character? They're welcome. Look, I don't believe that it is my job to force you to believe. Understand that New Albion's character is going to be determined by believers. If you can accept that, we can accept that it is not our job to compel you to believe. I don't think we would subject ourselves to beliefs that were overtly hostile. For instance, if you were going around saying, let's throw all the Christians off the roof, like a certain 5-letter religion would, that's not acceptable. However, if you are someone who's seeking, that's what you got to do. You got to search for it. And I welcome you to stand alongside us. The foxhole is the best place to convert people, right? But yeah, you're welcome. It's fine. I've set the laws because God gave us free will. You deserve to have free will. It's not about you believing things. Now, I don't think we're going to have a king whoever thinks of it that way. I really work hard to make that not happen, because I think when you allow the idea of people who do not have a good moral sense in themselves to go forward and be in charge, that doesn't work well. But that doesn't mean that you're a bad person. If anything, I was an agnostic for many, many years. So let me say this with full charity. God bless you in your search, man. Just keep seeking, and don't believe something just because I told you. Don't believe something just because anyone told you. You have to seek. I have no problem with that. I even atheism, I think it's terrible, but you have the right to be wrong. That's it. That's what it is. You will deal with the consequences of that, but building a society around that. You want me to show the garden? All right. The wife says that I have to end by showing the garden, and this is the pride of Mrs. Dana. So let's show the garden. You guys want a little garden tour before we close up here? Let me get my glasses on. All right. The wife wants the garden. And she's been a good sport. Usually I'm making her coffee this time of day. So let's see. Can I flip this around? Let's see if it'll let me. Oh, good. It will. Good. So this is our garden. We're on the back porch here. Garden tour. Everyone loves garden tour. These are some of the blueberries. And that's a combination of lingonberry and cranberry. And the wife can narrate if I screw any of this up. These are the aronia, which are called Viking berries sometimes, and they're also called chokeberries. We have over here, that's a Concord grape, and I believe this is a fig, isn't it here? Let's see if I'm right. No, this is the black cohosh down there. And that, believe it or not, is a banana tree down there that we have over there. See, we got a little New Albion flag in there. This is one of the blueberry pens. We got strawberries there. Those are more blueberries. Let's see if I can do this all. So these are the figs. You can see the little figs coming in. Yeah, those are nice. This is, let's see what Irwin is. I should remember this. This is an Australian beach cherry. So if you like obscure plants, there's something called Logies that's in Connecticut. They have an amazing selection. And actually, I would keep an eye when we get to September, because they're probably going to have ones at the end of the season. So these are chameleon plants. Let me show you one of Dana's favorites. This is called a mimosa plant. It's a sensitive plant where what it does is it's designed to be really enjoyable. So let's watch what happens when I touch it, okay? The leaves actually shudder, and they'll come back out. So it's actually kind of really enjoyable, being gentle with it. So you see it closed up on me, so it doesn't like us. But so it's kind of a fun plant to play with. We got rosemary here, the different herbs. There's some fennel over there, chives, thyme. I think there's some clove in here, isn't there? We got a little raspberry over there that's starting to come in a little bit. That thing took all season. You know, I got to tell you, I haven't been impressed with the plants I got at Tractor Supply, but some of the other ones. Although this one was a salvation project, and he's come along so good. Say hi to Julian. That's our olive tree. See him there? That's an Arbequina olive that's there. That one is actually turmeric, if I'm not mistaken, parsley, and I'm skipping over the ones I don't know. Dana may choose to mention some of them. She's got a couple of these ones are jasmine type plants that we have here. That's another fig, I think. So these are the potato plants, and we pulled out a bunch of potatoes yesterday. We have all these different buckets full of potatoes that are here. That is ginger. That's a plant for the church that we're rehabilitating. Some peppers that I have to give to Lori later because we've been growing extra, and we've been growing a lot of seeds to help people. This one here is going to be a lime tree when it gets bigger, and I don't know what the heck this one is. So Dana must have moved the orange trees. We must have put them over on the other porch. All right, so these are Hascaps. They're called honeyberries, and they're like blue little sweet berries that kind of look like a little packet. I got different flowers here. Those aren't so important. Is that basil? That looks like basil. Oh, that's the lemon basil. That's what that is. Okay. So this is a tea tree plant, so we can make our own tree. Hibiscus leaves, we're growing this. And a lot of these ones we got smaller because we're growing them for the year ahead. That was a tiger lily before the turtles went to town on it, unfortunately. Some other plants, marigold here. These are, I believe these are Caroline raspberries, if I'm not mistaken. So we have there, sweet and lemon basil. See, she knows what's up. And what are you? Are you the pepper plant? The pepper plant's been struggling. This is a vine. We got to get it to do better. I think it's just not warm enough. But we're trying to figure out all sorts of things. So that's the berries are up on the top here. Let's go down to the bottom. You guys like having the little $5 tour, of what we're doing? And I tell you what, I'd love to have a huge community sometime where we had a whole bunch of people going ahead and living on our own. We need to start thinking that way. I mean, seriously, we're running out of time. That's the lemon basil. That's lemongrass. The wife likes Thai food. Those are plants overrunning it. You can see over here, we got beans growing, are the taller ones with the little white flowers, and you harvest the seed from that. Excuse me. And these are kale. Down at the bottom, which I could eat any of these. These are the squash plants, and I did look for squash bugs to have out there. We have, what else we got down here? That's peppermint, and what was the toothache plant? The toothache plant's cool. You can use that as like a little Novocaine. You just rub it on your teeth. And this dude here, I don't remember what he is, so that's terrible. But you can see that the little bugs get it. This is, I believe this is a pumpkin. Let's go around here so you can actually see. And we'll go over the squash, and then we'll come back around. You can see the pumpkin coming in there. But the problem we've had, and this is what I do. Oh, it's a cherry tomato. Okay. So that's good. You can see the pea sprouts coming in over here. See all the little ones that are coming in bit by bit. Like, just to make it easier, because you probably can't tell us. Well, like right there. And the problem we've had with this is every morning I come out and I literally have flowers copulate with one another. If you look at any of these, let's see if I can get over it. When you go into the flowers, what you find is there are these male flowers that have the stamen, if I remember right's the word for it, and then the female ones will have a pistil, which looks kind of like a receptor. So you rip the male flower off, or you let the bees do it, but the bees will mix them up, and you bring them around. We also have the cucumbers coming in here. Give you an example of what a cucumber looks like on the vine. Some of these are round. There's different varieties we have, different beans coming in. See the beans working their way up the top. For those of you who know Murray loves beans. Different squashes coming in. We don't have any really growing on this, and I did check everything there. Brussels sprouts. So if you've never had a Brussels sprout vine, this is kind of fun. The Brussels sprouts don't actually grow on the leaves. What happens is over here, these little nubs that are in there, see if you can see my hand there, actually become the sprouts. See if we have any that are forming so you can actually see, because we're almost far enough in the season where they really, what they do is a lot of plants, and this is what you got to realize, plants will either flower or fruit a lot of times, and what you have to do is you have to constantly trim them if you want them to fruit, because you want them to think that it's the time to fruit, and usually they want to flower. So you flower certain plants to collect seeds, which is how you have them survive for years. So you go ahead and build people up so that they can make it to the next generation, but sometimes you got to cut them down so they can learn lessons. It's kind of like life, right? The flowering is the intellect, the fruiting is the wisdom. But you can see here we got some really we got some beans coming in here. I think these are bees, or these snap peas. These are peas. I apologize. So we'll see. Now, let's see what she says. If I took this really nice pea right here, and I ate it on camera. Would the wife be mad because I deprived her of her pea? Because she loves peas. We have all these sort of things. So it is true. There's a reason the Bible uses so many metaphors about pruning, because gardens will teach you a lot about the way life really works. You could learn so many lessons here. So these are what carrots look like at the top of them. You can see them. We got some little tomatoes that were late growers we put in here because our onion crop didn't do really great. That's what an onion looks like when you look in the ground, although this one's actually doing pretty good. I'm not going to dig it out, but I want you to see just a little bit what it looks like. That's a red onion. Those ones grew all right. I needed to put more soil in this bin. Soil is the most expensive part, and get some wild mushrooms growing in there. I don't know if they'll kill you. That's what a wild strawberry looks like, by the way. But you can see the tomato plants, they're doing pretty good. And what Dana does is she prunes the branches at the top to get some of the fruit. So let's go underneath. You can see all the tomatoes coming in that are there. And mind you, this is just two old people working together on this. Well, all right, one old guy and his young hot wife. But we have two different types. Those are Romas, and those are more like a beefsteak kind of tomato. But that's from 12 little plants. And you could do that from seedlings. These are the sort of things you need to be thinking about when you go forward. You can see how high it is to give you a perception of just how high it is. Some of these plants, you can see me, they're 6 feet tall. And, this is just basic stuff. You can make that buying a couple boards at Home Depot. This one is kind of an interesting bin. So we have cabbages, but it was too warm, so they didn't head. These are cabbage leaves. These are carrots. And you get off there. See this little slug? Or that's not a slug. That's a snail. All right, well, snails never fails. Go ahead. All right, so these are the blackberry plants, like that. And let's see if the little one over here finally grew. That one just would not grow. We got 3 of them in there. We're working our way around. You can see the trellising, more bees, peas, all that. And this is just what we do in our yard. You might think snails are cool, but what they do to your garden is not so cool. I gotta show you this. This is the compost pile, right? Where we threw all of our extra dirt from last year and ended up being pretty decent soil. And potatoes we threw in it actually ended up growing on their own. There's some growing in there. And we've got a couple tomato plants over at the end, even though tomatoes and potatoes don't grow well together. Companion planting. So this is a lesson that you guys would really appreciate. Put Epsom salt and the tomato will ripen. Great point, Side Road. Thank you for sharing that. Companion planting is understanding that certain plants like to play well with others. Tomatoes are finicky, for instance. They don't play well with a lot of things. If I put basil in there, they'd grow well. But if I put potatoes, what you realize when you deal with plants is there's 3 big things you have to think about. You have to think about nitrogen, you have to think about potassium, and phosphorus. And then there's other things really, but you got to think about the soil and all this. These are boysenberry plants, but I did not have a lot of luck with my cuttings this year. And that's one of the things I really had to learn better how to do it, because we really failed at that. And that's probably my fault. So Dana wanted me to show you the corn ear coming in. These are our corn. We got 12 growing. Let's see if I can find where the ear is starting here. I want to get in real close here. Where is it? Give me 1 second. I gotta get close because I'm told that. See this little grasshopper dude just hiding there. Get out of there. Come on, out. Where is the corn ear? I should be able to find it. She said I should find it. There's all these little things on it, all these little corn. No, those are just, they came down from above. So the corns theoretically should be at the top. I guess this must be it, that these are the ears that are going to come off. I guess. Oh, yeah, you see at the top. Okay, there you go. So, yeah, you can see the kernels starting to form along the stalk. Okay, so there you go. So you see along the very top that these are going to eventually be corn that we can eat. And it's a lot of work, to be honest with you. But yeah, we work pretty hard out here. And this is the lettuce for the turtles. We got butter crunch lettuce. We got, well, whatever. It's there. Oh, there. Look, those at the top. Okay. I'm not good at this. Okay, so we got all sorts of different lettuces. There's some arugula. There's some butter crunch. We'll just take a piece of it so you can see. Very tasty. Well, Dana is the gardener. I'm not. I don't see it. She tells me to come out here and find the damn thing, and I don't know where it is. I haven't been watching this every day. The wife does the gardening because I'm busy talking to you guys. It's in the leaves. Okay, well, where is it? Is that it? Oh, wait a second. I might be on something. Hold up. Oh, God. It doesn't help either that I'm too tall. That's it. Okay, there's where the corn's coming out, right there. Too old and too sore for this. Okay. So anyway, I found it. All right, I found the stalk. So you see, obviously, I don't know everything about the garden, and the corn is her business. I'm not involved with it. I tend to do the berries. All right, so we got all these are this is the beefsteak tomato. It's growing really well. We got some jalapeno peppers growing up in here. There's an eggplant in there, and these were more things we were trying than we were actually doing in depth. And that's one of the things. I can't wait for some of these to get red, but we're letting it go slow because we want to go forward. And that's a horseradish root for flavoring. We have a couple different berries down there. Currants are down there. This one was one of the ones I did get to grow well. This is Niagara grape. Actually, it's from Region 2, if you want to know. Or no, that's not one from Region 2. Those are from Region 2, since John's in here this morning. We also got this one recently. This is an awesome Concord grape. I just recently replanted that. We got more. These look like string beans to me. What else we got over here? Peas, beans, another squash plant. What else do we got? Pink champagne. Currant. Oh, it's so good. Okay. What else we got? That's right. Let's go down to the very edge here. And we did this all. I mean, it adds up. The biggest expense, to be honest with you, was the soil. That's a hops plant if I ever want to brew things. So if we get one of those little fruits, supposedly they're pretty tasty. I don't know. And what's down here? What did you put in here? Ever-bearing straw. Oh, we put strawberry in there. That's interesting. Okay. And those are mulberry plants. So we have a lot of different berries. I will share one thing, though, as we go around here, because I want to get to see, we got more stuff to make more bins for next year, and I'm probably going to get more Home Depot. 55-gallon barrel. Don't know what I'm doing with it yet. We'll figure it out. But these are the ones I'm not happy with because I wanted to have berries this. What do I do with the plants that won't survive the winter? Okay, great question. So what we went ahead and did was all of these plants, with one or two exceptions for which we're quite personally aware, are set up to deliberately to save the winter. You have to know what agricultural region you're in. We're in zone 4A, so most of our plants are graded to 4 or to 3, or even to 2, which could survive in like the Arctic phrase. Show you one other cool thing. You see our front yard. We don't actually mow our yard. We know what's over here. Dandelion is food. Wild strawberry is food. Yarrow is medicine. See if we can find any St. John's wort that's in the back. That's another medicine. I think these could be St. John's wort. But I'm bringing you around the side of the house because over here on the south-facing side, you can see all of our citrus trees. These guys won't survive the winter. No, the turtles killed the garden. They're not going in there. This is Sprite. This is a dwarf Meyer lemon, and he's really perked up really good. We got some great new growth growing here on the lime tree that's here. This is, it's not a key lime. It's, I think it's a Persian lime, if I remember right. We got, this is the avocado, if I'm not mistaken. I'm trying to remember which ones are which because I'm so bad at it. Oh no, these are the oranges. This is a orange split with lemon, so it's going to have some different things that grow on it. But we got things that are more adaptable to our society, or where we are as a dwarf tree. This is a citrophanilla. All right, that's another one of the orange varieties, and that is passion flower. And then that's Dana's little house plant. So we do have a lot of things, and we're always looking to add more. If I ever get an excuse to go down to Connecticut and go see that big place, we're going to grab a couple more. The shipping on this stuff ends up being ridiculous. But the question of what we go ahead and do to survive is a good one. And what I will show you, we'll go in the house real fast so you can see, we actually go ahead and we grow mushrooms. You see the oyster mushrooms growing here. We grow blocks off of that so we can have protein because we couldn't have animals here. But it's an absolutely awesome way to go about it. And we have other ones. I just have to put the other rack together. You see my pressure canner, what we've been up to. That's a homemade pot roast there. 14 cans, 3.25 gallons. The turtles, with the exception of Chloe, who's out wandering somewhere, sitting in here, waiting for their chance to terrorize us all. But what I wanted to show you was that in here, when winter comes and we need to grow things for herbs, you see we got a grow tent. And that was our plan, that we wanted to be able to do that so that we would have the opportunity to be able to be successful if anything got kind of crazy. So that's what it's like over at the hacienda. As you see, we got dehydrators, and we do all sorts of stuff. It's homestead living, but the thing is, not being dependent on anyone else is really a smart way to live. So I'm showing you not just the garden, but you have to start thinking through the problems. And when you think through one problem to the next problem to the next problem, you become really able to deal with a lot of issues. A small family could live in that grow tent, and I got the lights in there and a whole bunch of other stuff I got to clear out. But that is kind of the way we've been thinking about the problem. So that's what we've been doing here to prepare. And you can do a lot. And, you know, it doesn't really have to cost a lot. I mean, we were a little bit more aggressive, but we used some of our stimulus money to use that way because we wanted to be in a position where if you ever can't go buy, sell, or trade, we want to be able to feed ourselves. And that's it. Oh, don't say that. No, the turtles are not going to be meat. To tell you the truth, they would not be useful for that. What they actually would be useful for, to be honest with you, is if you had a bigger field, you put them out in there and they trample through it 100 times a day, they would serve much the same purpose as the chicken do for farmers, and that's more useful for them. Plus, what they eat actually is they eat the wilds that are in the grass, because if I show you our backyard here, just give you a feel for what we're actually looking at, you'll see that we have a lot of wild things, and I've begun seeding some things in here that can help. They're not everywhere, but you see some strawberries that are in there. I'm trying to get some Arctic raspberries and going ahead and making it so that what we can do is we can sustain ourselves off of where we live, and that's really what you want to do. The only thing that sucks is for me to do that properly, that tree's going to have to eventually go, and I really feel bad about that because I actually like trees. But anyway, so that is what we have going on here, and it gives you a little bit of feel. I didn't plan on giving you a tour, but the wife asked me to, so we always listen to the wife because, as you all know, happy wife, happy life. But that's what life is like over here on the hacienda and what we actually do. Do I hunt? No, not usually, but getting meat around here won't be a problem. There's reasons for that. I actually have a lot. Why I do things certain ways is sort of complicated, but put it this way, if I had to hunt, I would. When it comes to meat abilities, I didn't go through everything I have, but suffice it to say, we will be okay for quite a while. And up here, we are on a very large lake where fishing will be incredibly easy, and actually there's decent deer and moose stock. So for a while, we'll be okay. We have a low population density. We only got 2,000 people. Even if you count all the tourists, let's say the power went out today, there's only 5,000 people, and a lot of them would rush back home. So assuming you had 2,500, we'd be fine up here. The bigger problem being power outage, but I got a generator. So no, I know I need to do that. I got a lot of things I need to do. I do have a fishing rod and all that. And I have a brother-in-law who loves to do stuff like that, so he'll be able to do so. But we are definitely focused, like John says, on self-preservation, because that's how we have to survive. And every one of you need to be thinking the same way. The truth is, if the lights go out, do you have a plan to survive? If the power stays off, if you can't get heat, I mean, you didn't see my extra heaters I have in there, but we've got a plan for everything because we live in strange times, and being able to rely on yourself and those around you is the plan. Set up everything you can around yourself, make others aware, share, have an effective community. That's a good game plan. So I think that, and pray. Always pray, man. You always need help. That will, because that's what will actually get the things that come your way. You know, the thing about it is, if you, protection's a real thing. You know, put on the armor of God and be ready for that. So that is our garden. That's our background, and we'll see and let you go here. So yeah, no, we're not going to eat the turtles. We're not going to eat the snakes. And if it comes down to it, I mean, there's a lot of other solutions. Good deal. We have access to one very easily. I don't have one in here because the house isn't set up for it, but I have a very good friend who, if I needed to, I could have one in here. Literally with about a very short walk, let's put it that way, we could have one in very quickly. What we actually do for our backup heat, by the way, is we actually run a propane one. We have something that runs separate beyond, because in New England, what you have up here is you have a separate heating oil, so we keep that fully stocked, and we should be okay for the winter. But if we need wood, we can definitely do that. It's just, the problem with wood stoves is unless you have the proper venting, it's a lot of problems, and that's really the issue. Remember, we don't own this. I would love to build a perfect community, though. Dana and I always joke about it. We'd love to build a Hobbiton community Shire. So if anyone has, 8 figures sitting around, or even like low 7 figures, we could totally do this. We could go ahead and build that, and that would be friggin' awesome. But that's neither here nor there. So you guys have seen enough of my preps. Make sure you're working on your own. God bless each and every one of you. I hope you have a very nice day. And this is Tom Kaczynski. I'll see you at 7 p.m. tonight. All right, bye.